Hello everyone. We're going to do the circulatory system draw along, and the first thing we're going to start with, we're just going to start with the heart. There's more to the circulatory system than the heart, but that's where we're going to start. And I get my smoothing turned on. We're not going to draw a real heart in here, but I want to draw kind of a stylized heart just to go over the parts of the heart. And you can oddly start with this kind of cool shield shape. And I just paused that a second and went and I popped open this drawing that I had shown you a week or two ago of the heart that I had drawn for a client. But if I overlay it on the shield shape, you can kind of get the idea of the various chambers of the heart. So again, this is more realistic. And somewhere I have a sketch of a cadaver heart. Maybe I'll pause it and see if I can find it. Okay, rarely are things that easy to find. This is a sketch that I did a long time ago of a heart out of a cadaver. So it's a little dried up, of course, but you still can get kind of the basic shape of the heart and the different chambers when you do kind of an overlay like that. So there's one, there's the second one, and here's where we're drawing. Let me get these out of the way so I don't accidentally draw on them. Okay, alright, so we're going to first, and the heart is going to be kind of kicked at this angle. This is maybe a bit steep. I'm gonna change it a little bit. Probably a little bit more like that. It's probably a little more accurate because what this does is when you have the lungs in here, so the lungs, the diaphragm, there's your right lung, not this right lung, the patient's right lung if you're in anatomical position, and here's the left lung. And the left lung, you'll see when we get to the respiratory system, it has 2 lobes instead of the 3 on the other, and it's got this this area in here kind of notched out, and this is where our little heart sits. Our heart shape sits right down in there. And if I erase him out of there just a little bit, knock him back. There's how the heart is going to kind of sit in the body. Okay, parts. Let's do some parts. I have kind of our usual cheat sheet over here to help with spelling because, again, I get excited and my handwriting gets a little gnarly. The way the heart is labeled, the top of it is called the base. I know, it's backwards. And the bottom point is called the apex. And I believe I looked it up. I don't remember why. It just is. The top sections are called the atrium. And you have your right atrium, because again, we're looking at the person's right, not the drawing's right, and the left atrium. And then we have the ventricles. And again, we have the right ventricle and the left ventricle. Okay. Now, your heart is pretty much just one big muscle. And it's made up of a few different layers, though. And let's see if we go here. We'll turn those off just so we're focused a little bit more. I'm going to get a big, kind of a thickish line to do the main wall of the heart. And I will do this kind of orangish color. I'm going to start over here. And I'm just going to kind of draw along my shield. And I'm going to draw this middle wall called the septum. So what we have right here is this main muscular wall is called the myocardium. And then we're going to have a thin interior wall it's going to be on both sides. You could turn one of these into a Valentine's Day card, kind of fun. I have one of those somewhere too. Maybe I'll dig that up. And this thinner interior wall is going to be the endocardium. And we're going to have an external wall. I'm going to make it the same color because it's on the... I'm going to make it a different color. Alright, I'm going to color code this. These colors are not accurate, obviously. We're going to have a very thin exterior. This is the pericardium. And we're going to have another outside wall, kind of outside of this one, like a sac that the heart sits in. This is called the Serous Pericardium, S-E-R-O-U-S. And that is going to be filled with a fluid called the pericardial fluid. And I don't do too many, it's kind of a yellowish. I don't do too many things in yellowish, but let's do yellowish. Make it a little smaller. Make it a little bigger. And I need a darker color for the label. This is going to be the serous pericardium. Serous pericardium. Oh, I'm sorry. That is not the serous pericardium. That is the pericardial fluid. Sorry, losing my mind. So God, it looks just like the same word above it. Pericardial. Which is kind of a lubricating fluid. So there's no friction between the serous pericardium and the pericardium. Okay. And I always wish that I would label these somewhere different because it gets to be a bit of a mess if I don't. Let's do this. Let's take this. And we'll cut these little dudes right off of there for now. Edit, paste special, paste in place, and there they go. They're on their own layer. I forgot to. Oh, those are from the other. Those are from the other slide. We'll get rid of the intro slide. We don't need that one anymore. Okay. Anyhow, let's go up here. Let's get a new layer, and we're going to talk a little bit about the major veins, excuse me, about the major veins and arteries. And let's see, brush, okay. All right, the first thing that I'm gonna put in here, and we'll have to do a little erasing after we put it in. I'm gonna get a great big brush. And we're going to put in the aorta, and most people are familiar with the aorta. kind of comes up, circles around behind the heart, and down through the chest and the abdomen. I'll double it up, try to make it a little darker. Alright, that's going to be our aorta. And I'll go back and erase because it's behind the heart. Get that out of there. 50-50 eraser. I'm always finding that one's not the one I wanted. There we go. Again, if you want the brush set, a few people have downloaded it and kind of enjoy playing with it. Just email me and I'll send you the brush set. So, coming off of the aorta, we have a few other blood vessels that kind of come off towards the top. And I'm going to just kind of outline these dudes. Let's see, I just want black for this. So we'll have these open. So here's these are cut, obviously. And we'll label them in just a second. So here's our aorta. And we have to add other things in front of and behind it, so we'll get there. Alright, so we have the ABCs. Okay, that's just the way I taught myself to remember them. A, B, C, apostrophe, S. Alright, A is for aorta. B, smoothing off here so I can write, is the brachiocephalic. Artery. C is the common carotid. And S is the subclavian. And as you go on and study anatomy, you'll find out there's lots of little rhymes and things like these, ABCs, to remember things. Anyhow, so we'll have this, we'll talk about the valves here in a little bit. So that's the aorta. The pulmonary artery, I'll throw another layer on here so we can erase. Let's do red, but a different shade of red. The pulmonary artery is going to go in front of, both in front of and behind the aorta. So it's going to cross over. I'll go back and erase some stuff. And it's going to go behind, right now I'm going to go in front of. It's going to go behind the, through and behind the aorta, both directions. So if I get in here and erase some stuff, here it's behind, here it's behind, here it's in front. And the pulmonary artery goes to the lungs, and we'll talk about that more as we go when we get into the circulation route. Alright, so that's our pulmonary artery. And we have, I want a purple for this, I don't have too many good purples. Our pulmonary arteries are going to come out from the back of the heart. So we can do them on the same layer. They're going to come out like this, usually kind of joined. Where's words at? Okay. Leave them in the way for now. And your pulmonary. real quick if we compare it. Oh, I dropped those way down there, didn't I? If we compare it, here's your pulmonary arteries here and your aorta. I mean your pulmonary veins, sorry. I'm having a day. Alright, so we have the aorta. Brush, we need a layer. These are your pulmonary veins. You see two V's, it means plural, pulmonary veins, pulmonary artery. Let's see, pulmonary veins. And these, let me get that purple back, are going to open up here into the left atrium. And inferior vena cava. So they coming off the back of the heart, and again we'll put it on another layer, coming off the back of the heart, so we'll erase some of this, is you have your superior and your inferior vena cava. And you know, this would just go all the way through. It doesn't go all the way through. It goes in one side, out the other. We'll draw it all the way through right now. So if I go back and erase what I don't need. Going to go behind all this. And the vena cava is a vein, a large vein. This is the superior vena cava, and this one below is the inferior vena cava. And I think that's what I want for right this second. I don't know if I labeled that or not. I didn't. This wall in here, put it on the label layer. This is the septum. I think I said it, but I don't think I wrote it. I'm not sure why I didn't think it was important enough to write. Some of these. Let's type out of here so we don't get confused. We'll do some of it. And what else did I want to label in here for you? So we had the aorta. This area right here, this lateral arch, right there. This is the arch of the aorta. And this area that goes down, this is the descending aorta. And it's going to keep on going down until it comes through the diaphragm, where there's a hole for it. So the descending, and then when it gets below the diaphragm, it becomes the abdominal aorta. Okay, so valves. Back here. All right, some different valves that we want to put in here. The valve between, I don't want my shield back, where to go? Oh, that's not it. That's not it. There it is. So between the atrium and the ventricle, there are valves that regulate the flow of blood. And we have a valve here called the tricuspid. And we have another valve over here between the atrium and the ventricle called the bicuspid. Alright, tricuspid, tri has 3 flaps, bicuspid, bi has 2 flaps. So there'd be a third one in the background here, which you can kind of see here, the bicuspid and the tricuspid. And we have on the pulmonary artery, we have what's called a semilunar valve. And we also have that on the aorta. So we have the aortic semilunar and the pulmonary semilunar. And what those look like is it's shaped like this, and then it's got these 3 flaps that kind of open and close to again regulate the blood flow. And I do have another drawing of that. Let me pause again. I'll go find that one real quick. Alright, I'm having a lucky day. I found both of those really quickly. This is the this is what the semilunar valve looks like. Kind of if you're inside the heart looking up into it, or actually if you're up above the heart looking down into it. So just FYI, I'll put that up here with the other drawings. Okay, now we get into the interesting stuff. We're going to talk, see what labels I can get rid of here. We're going to talk a few minutes about the route of blood flow, just because it's one of those things that can be very confusing for people. And don't try to memorize it now. Just, draw it, learn what you can, and then, when you end up in an anatomy class, and the next time you hear about it, it'll make more sense, and you'll go, oh yeah, I remember some of that. So we'll get some of this out of here. There, dispatched a heart. Oh, that was sad. So sad. Okay. And I can get rid of all that. Okay, and the reason I wanted to get rid of all that is because it can get a little confusing with the route of blood flow. So let's take all this, we'll stick her in a folder, and I'm going to turn the opacity down on it a little bit so we can write here with the, I'm sure we can all still see that. And what's that one? Direction of blood flow. What do you say? We don't need that yet. Unless there's a blank. Okay, we'll draw on that one. Okay, so direction of blood flow. This, I tell you, just for me, when I first started anatomy, this was challenging to learn. Once you know it, and you think about it, you're like, that kind of makes sense why it goes the way it does. Is that so? If you remember that we color arteries red to distinguish them from veins, and arteries are red to show oxygenated blood. Veins are blue to indicate deoxygenated blood. And then there's an area in here where we have kind of a purple, where we have kind of a in between. I'll tell you why. So the blood that's coming from your body, it's gone out to your body, and your body's taken the oxygen from it, put the carbon dioxide in it to get transported back to the lungs to go out of your body. To come back to your lungs, it comes in the superior vena cava from the top, or it comes in the inferior vena cava from the lower part of your body. All right, so this will be step 1. From there, it's going to come down and it's going to come into the right atrium. Be 2, where it comes into the right atrium. It's going to go through the tricuspid valve, down into the right ventricle, and then your heart's going to pump, and this valve will close. So after it goes through, this closes back up, and now the only place it can go is up through the aorta. So it goes through the semilunar valve. So this is number 3. Through the semilunar valve, this is 4, where it's going to go into the pulmonary artery. And it's on its way to the lungs. This is where the color coding kind of goes awry. That this is an artery, but it's carrying deoxygenated blood because arteries travel away from the heart. They also happen to typically carry oxygenated blood away from the heart, but this one is leaving, going away from the heart to the lungs. So then it goes out here and it goes off to both lungs. So this is to lungs. Let's see, 3, this is 4, 5, this is 6, off to the lungs. It goes out into the lungs, and it drops off CO2, and it picks up O2. Okay, so it drops off carbon dioxide to be breathed out, and it picks up oxygen that you had breathed in. That from the lungs then comes back and it goes through the pulmonary veins. So now we have the veins taking oxygenated blood back to the heart. So again, that's where that kind of blows apart. That it's more about the direction of blood flow than the oxygenated or deoxygenated blood. So that's 6, 7 is the work in the lungs, 8 is up here. Through the pulmonary arteries, out the left atrium, through the bicuspid valve, down into the left ventricle, which again then that closes, and when the heart compresses, the only place it has to go, this is 9, this is 10, the only place it has to go is through the semilunar valve up into the aorta. So we'll call that 11. Goes up into the aorta, and exits are ABCs, exits to the upper body, and comes around and exits to the lower body. 9, 10, this is 11, the aorta is going to be 12. So those are kind of the steps of the blood flow. Again, we have the same thing over here where it comes and drops off the CO2, picks up the oxygen, and comes back in. You get the idea. And this comes all the way across to come in here. Okay, so that's the direction of blood flow. And again, don't try to memorize that. Just kind of draw it out. Try to get a kind of an idea in your head of where it's going and what it's doing. And then next time you take an anatomy class, it'll come to you a lot quicker. It'll make a lot more sense. Okay, let's then now it looks like a football game. All right, let's get that out of there. Okay, I don't ever play football. It's probably I just saw it on a movie somewhere. I want to talk a little bit about the veins and the arteries, because we're all real familiar with the idea of the veins and the arteries. They're kind of the larger structures. And I'm going to start up here. I'm going to, let's see, I always need this, my hands shake a lot. Start up here with our artery. And we'll have it split. You get the idea. Go off that way. And it'll come and split off this way. And we're going to have down here, we'll have a similar idea, only we're going to have a vein. And the vein will split off into smaller areas. Alright, so this is our vein, right? This is our artery. These two smaller things that split off, when they split off smaller, these are called arterioles. Up here. And these down here, the veins are called, come on, guess it, venules. All right. These split into even smaller veins and arteries. These are still our venules right here. But these are going to split into even smaller, called capillaries. If we get our arterioles, they're going to split off. And these are going to have capillaries. So these are capillaries. These are capillaries. And in these capillaries, where it switches from vein to artery is where the exchange is going to take place, where it's going to take CO2, blood that's been exhausted from your body, and it's going to take the CO2 and it's going to replace it with oxygen, and that's going to happen right here where these make the change. So here's our oxygen rich blood. It gets used up by the body. So say it goes down through the arch of the aorta, the thoracic aorta, the abdominal aorta, down into the lower body, and then it comes back up through the veins. So in here at some place in the capillaries, it is where the oxygen exchange takes place. I over-explained that and made a mess of it, but I think you get the idea. The veins, one other thing when we talk about things traveling through the veins, is that your veins actually have these valves inside of them just in your lower body. Speaking of things coming from the lower body. And these are one-way valves, so that blood can flow through, but then when it gets through, it can't come back down. So it's a one-way valve, like down in your legs. So your muscular system, as you walk, is squeezing the veins and helping to pump the blood back up towards your heart. But to make sure blood doesn't pool down lower, you have these valves in your veins. This is actually when this kind of structure starts to blow out, this is what causes varicose veins. When these valves wear out and then these start retaining more blood than they can really hold, and they start bulging, which again is kind of interesting. Now, I'm pretty sure I mentioned this when we were talking about the when we were doing our kidney dissections, when we were talking about the veins and arteries, the renal veins and the renal arteries, is that the structure of the veins and arteries is a little bit different. The artery is a much thicker walled beast than the vein. So there's going to be our artery. Here's going to be our vein. And they have similar a similar construction. They're just put together a little bit different. The middle, the open section, I'm trying to find a neutral color here. The open section, so like the inside of the garden hose that the water flows through, is called the lumen. And it literally on a hose is called the lumen as well. So that's your lumen. Then you have a couple layers on the inside. Let's see. You have this first layer called the tunica externa. So we're going to go backwards. Tunica externa. And you have the next layer, which is going to be thicker. Not drawn to scale. Tunica media. And the next layer, which forms the wall of the lumen is actually the negative space, is the tunica intima. And again, the lumen is just kind of the opening. On the veins, we're going to have the same idea, only we're going to have it kind of on a narrower scale. So here, so you got your lumen, which is again the negative space. The wall of it is the tunica, oops, I did it the wrong color, the tunica intima. There's our interior wall. And then you're going to have the media, tunica media, and the tunica externa. And then you have these valves in here, which would be there you go. You have the valves, the one-way valves on the walls of the lumen. And let's see, I'm going to pull this one up to the top here. I don't want to go through and draw the whole thing. I don't want you to go through and draw the whole thing. But this is the major veins and arteries of the circulatory system. And again, when you take an anatomy class, you're going to need to learn all of this. So again, don't try to memorize it right now. Just interact with it, absorb what you can, and next time you go through it, it should make a lot more sense. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me or hit me up in class. All right, hope you all have a great day.